At 5:47 a.m. on August 8, 1941, 24-year-old Lyudmila Pavlichenko found herself crouched behind a stack of rubble in Belaylivka, Ukraine, observing a German sniper who was preparing to kill a Soviet soldier positioned 40 meters to her left. She was a history student with only 4 months of service in the Red Army, carrying 0 confirmed kills and facing a daunting path toward 309 kills that would eventually define her legacy. The Wehrmacht had deployed 3 full divisions to capture Odessa, amounting to 150,000 German soldiers advancing toward the city. Soviet forces faced overwhelming odds, outnumbered 3-1, and Lyudmila had just volunteered to join a sniper unit that was losing soldiers at an alarming rate, faster than they could be trained and replaced. She had been stationed on the front lines for merely 6 hours, without sleep or food, equipped only with her Mosin Nagant rifle, 40 rounds of ammunition, and a fierce determination fueled by patriotic anger. Her university in Kyiv had been bombed just 11 days earlier, resulting in the deaths of 73 students. Her professor, Dr. Anatoly Vulov, had been trapped under the rubble for 2 hours before his body was recovered. Her closest friend, Natasha, had perished in the library when fire consumed the building, leaving her unable to escape. The morning following these tragic events, Lyudmila had enlisted in the military. The recruiting officer had initially insisted she should become a nurse, asserting that women belonged in medical units rather than infantry. Lyudmila had countered by informing him of her shooting experience since age 14, including her marksman scores in youth shooting clubs and her top-tier performance in regional competitions. The officer had responded with laughter, stating that shooting targets bore no resemblance to actual combat, which involved blood, screams, and death. He believed women lacked the capacity to handle such conditions. Lyudmila had requested to be tested. The officer had provided her with a rifle and pointed toward a fence post 100 meters away. She had placed 5 rounds through the center of the target. The officer's amusement had ceased immediately. She was assigned to the 25th Rifle Division as a sniper. That had occurred 4 months prior to this moment. Now she was positioned in Ukraine, watching Germans kill her comrades, and she had not yet taken her first shot. The German sniper was positioned 280 meters away, behind the wall of a destroyed farmhouse. Lyudmila could see his helmet through a crack in the masonry. He was tracking the Soviet soldier, waiting for him to move. The Soviet soldier was Sergeant Dmitry Kravchenko, 32 years old, married with 2 children. Lyudmila had met him the previous day, when he had shared his bread with her during an 18-hour period without food. He was now moments away from death, unaware that a German marksman had him in his sights. Lyudmila raised her rifle with steady hands and controlled breathing. Her instructor's guidance echoed in her mind, advising her not to think about killing, but rather to focus on solving a problem involving distance, wind, and target movement. It was mathematics rather than murder. The distance was 280 meters, with a light crosswind from the west, and the target remained stationary. She adjusted for windage and settled the crosshairs on the crack where the German helmet was visible. Her finger touched the trigger. This moment would determine everything, whether she could kill or could not kill, whether she was truly a soldier or merely a student pretending to be one. She squeezed the trigger. The Mosin Nagant kicked against her shoulder, and the sound cracked across the battlefield. Through her scope, she observed the German helmet jerk backward before disappearing from view. Kravchenko looked around in confusion, unaware of what had just transpired. Lyudmila chambered another round and scanned for additional threats. Nothing moved. She had just killed her first German soldier and felt nothing. No guilt, no satisfaction, only the immediate question of where the next target might be. That was August 8th, 1941. By May 1942, Lyudmila Pavlichenko would achieve 309 confirmed kills, including 36 enemy snipers, establishing herself as the deadliest female sniper in history. The remarkable technique that made this possible was something Soviet doctrine explicitly prohibited. She used herself as bait. The first sniper Lyudmila lost was Lieutenant Anna Morozova on August 19, 1941. Morozova had served as a sniper for 8 months, with 47 confirmed kills. She was experienced, intelligent, and operated strictly according to established procedures. Soviet sniper doctrine provided clear guidelines. Never expose your position, find concealment, take your shot, and move immediately to a secondary position. Never remain in one location for more than 30 minutes. Never fire more than 3 shots from the same location. Never engage unless you have a clear exit route. Morozova had followed every rule meticulously. She had positioned herself in a bombed-out apartment building on the 3rd floor with excellent sight lines and 2 exit routes planned. She had engaged a German machine gun crew at 320 meters with 1 shot, achieving 1 kill, then moved to her secondary position on the 2nd floor. After waiting 20 minutes, she had engaged a German officer at 280 meters with a clean kill. As she began moving to her tertiary position on the ground floor, a German sniper had shot her through the stairwell window with a single shot to the chest. She had died before medics arrived. The German sniper had been tracking her movements, observed her first shot, predicted her movement pattern, and killed her when she relocated. Morozova never saw him. She had followed doctrine perfectly and died regardless. Lyudmila was in the same building, 1 floor below. She heard the shot, heard Morozova fall, and heard the Germans laughing as they celebrated killing a Soviet sniper. The German who killed Morozova was Hans Becker, a Wehrmacht sniper with 89 confirmed kills, who specialized in counter-sniper operations. He hunted Soviet snipers with the same dedication Lyudmila applied to hunting German soldiers. Becker's pattern was consistent. He waited for Soviet snipers to engage, tracked their positions, anticipated their movements, and killed them when they relocated. Soviet doctrine made his work easier. Following the rules made snipers predictable, and predictability meant death. The second sniper Lyudmila lost was Corporal Viktor Stepanov on August 27, 1941. Stepanov was 19 years old, had been a sniper for 6 weeks, and had achieved 11 confirmed kills. He was a dedicated young soldier eager to prove himself. He had established position in a drainage ditch 400 meters from German lines, with perfect concealment, good sight lines, and textbook positioning. He had engaged a German patrol at dawn with 2 shots, achieving 2 kills. The Germans scattered and took cover. Stepanov followed doctrine by staying low, waiting 15 minutes, and preparing to move to his secondary position. A German artillery shell landed directly in his ditch, resulting in complete obliteration, with nothing left to bury. The Germans had called in artillery based on where they estimated the sniper was hiding, which was a standard counter-sniper tactic. They would observe the shot, estimate the position, and saturate the area with explosives. Stepanov's concealment was perfect, his shot placement was excellent, and his adherence to doctrine was flawless. He died nevertheless because the Germans understood exactly how Soviet snipers operated.
By September, Lyudmila had witnessed 7 snipers die. Every single one had followed doctrine, and every single one had died because they were predictable. German counter-sniper units demonstrated exceptional skill. They understood Soviet tactics, positioning, and movement patterns. Fighting according to established procedures meant dying according to those same procedures. Ludmila studied how each engagement developed and identified the same pattern repeatedly. A Soviet sniper would take position, engage a target. Germans would triangulate the shot, and counter-sniper forces or artillery would respond, resulting in the Soviet sniper's death or retreat. The problem was not marksmanship. Soviet snipers possessed excellent shooting skills. The problem was that they fought defensively, waited for targets, took shots when opportunities appeared, followed doctrine, never initiated contact, never controlled the engagement, and never forced the Germans to react to them. German snipers, particularly experienced ones like Becker, hunted actively. They did not wait for targets, but created them. They forced Soviet snipers to expose themselves and then eliminated them. Ludmila needed to reverse that dynamic, to stop being prey and become the predator. However, Soviet doctrine was explicit. Concealment equals survival. Exposure equals death. Never compromise your position and never give the enemy a target. The doctrine made logical sense in theory. In practice, it functioned as a death sentence. German counter-snipers possessed too much skill and could locate snipers even when they were perfectly concealed. Ludmila decided to do something completely against regulations. She would expose herself deliberately, make herself visible, draw fire, and then kill whoever shot at her. The plan was insane and violated every principle of sniper warfare. It would likely result in her death. However, 7 snipers were already dead, and Ludmila refused to become the 8th. The technique required precision timing, perfect positioning, and absolute nerve. Ludmila would establish 2 nests rather than 1, a primary and a secondary, but only 4 to 6 meters apart, close enough that she could move between them in under 3 seconds. She would place a decoy in the primary nest, such as a helmet on a stick or a spare sleeve stuffed with straw, anything that resembled a person from 300 meters away. She would hide in the secondary nest and wait. When a German sniper shot at the decoy, the muzzle flash would reveal their position. Ludmila would have 2 to 4 seconds before they realized the decoy was fake. In those seconds, she would acquire the target, aim, and fire 1 shot. If she missed, the German would know her real position, and she would be dead. If she hit the target, she would move immediately, reset the trap, and repeat the process. The plan was suicidal. Soviet command would court-martial her if they discovered what she was doing. Exposing a position deliberately, even a fake one, constituted tactical insanity. Nevertheless, Ludmila had watched too many friends die following doctrine. She tested the technique on September 3, 1941, in the early morning hours, with German lines positioned 340 meters away. She established position in a ruined cellar near the front line with 2 shooting positions, one with a helmet propped on debris positioned to resemble a sniper observing German positions. She waited in the secondary position 5 meters to the right, completely concealed. Her rifle was aimed at the area where a German counter-sniper would most likely establish position. 45 minutes passed without movement. Ludmila's muscles ached from maintaining a motionless position. Her eyes watered from staring through the scope. Insects crawled across her hands, but she did not move. At 6:17 a.m., a shot cracked across no man's land. The helmet in her primary nest jerked backward. Someone had taken the bait. Ludmila scanned the German lines and located a muzzle flash 320 meters away with a figure shifting position behind a brick wall. She had 3 seconds. Her crosshairs settled on the figure. She could not see details, only a shape. She fired. The figure dropped. Ludmila did not wait to confirm the kill. She abandoned both positions, moved 40 meters west, and set up in a different building. Through her scope, she watched the brick wall where the German had been positioned. 2 German soldiers appeared, dragging a body. The kill was confirmed. The technique worked. Over the following 6 weeks, Ludmila refined the method. She learned exactly how long to wait, how to position decoys, and how to predict where German snipers would establish positions. She studied their patterns obsessively. German snipers preferred elevated positions and liked to shoot from buildings on the second or third floor. They avoided ground-level hides because Soviet artillery targeted those first. They positioned themselves with the sun at their backs when possible and rarely changed positions during daylight. Ludmila used all of this intelligence. She positioned her decoys to be visible from elevated German positions. She timed her operations for when the sun would be in German snipers' eyes rather than hers. She built her secondary nests at ground level where Germans would not expect her. She treated every engagement like a chess match. The decoy was her opening move, the German's shot was their response, and her kill shot was checkmate. By October, Ludmila had achieved 78 confirmed kills, with 22 of them being German snipers. Word spread through Soviet units about the woman sniper who hunted the hunters. Soldiers began requesting her for counter-sniper operations. Officers who had lost men to German snipers came to her personally and pleaded for her assistance. Some brought bottles of vodka, some brought extra rations, and some simply brought their grief. A lieutenant named Volkov came to her on October 12th. His platoon had lost 9 men to a German sniper in 4 days. The sniper operated near a railway junction, shot from different positions, and killed officers, radio operators, and machine gunners, anyone important. Volkov's men were terrified and refused to move during daylight. The entire platoon was paralyzed. Volkov asked Ludmila to kill the German. She agreed, not because of the vodka Volkov offered, but because she remembered Morozova and Stepanov, because German snipers had killed 7 of her friends, and she wanted revenge for every single one. She studied the railway junction for 2 days, watching through binoculars from 800 meters away. She mapped every position with sightlines, counted buildings, measured distances, and noted wind patterns. The German was intelligent. He never shot from the same place twice and never established a pattern. However, he had to shoot, and when he shot, he had to be somewhere.
At 6:30 a.m., the decoy stood in the open for 40 minutes without incident. Ludmila remained motionless, despite her legs cramping and her back aching. At 7:11 a.m., the shot came. The decoy's helmet spun away. Ludmila observed the muzzle flash 420 meters away, inside a train car. The German had positioned himself inside a destroyed boxcar, which was a brilliant hiding spot. Ludmila had considered it unlikely because the boxcar was exposed to Soviet artillery. However, the German had calculated that Soviet forces would not waste shells on a single boxcar. He had been correct until that moment. Ludmila adjusted for distance and wind. The German was moving inside the boxcar. She could see his shape through the open door. She had perhaps 5 seconds before he realized the decoy was fake. She fired. Through her scope, she observed the German jerk backward. He did not fall, but stumbled. She had hit him, but not fatally. He was wounded and attempting to escape. She chambered another round and fired again. The German dropped. Volkov's men moved in afterward and found the German dead inside the boxcar. 2 shots, one through the shoulder, one through the head. His logbook listed 67 confirmed kills. Volkov asked Ludmila how she had known where he was positioned. She explained that she had not known, but had simply made him shoot first, then killed him. It was simple mathematics. Volkov responded that it was not mathematics, but rather courage, or insanity, probably both. German units placed a bounty on her, 100 Reichsmarks for whoever killed the Russian girl, then 500 Reichsmarks, then 1,000 Reichsmarks. The price kept rising as her kill count climbed. German propaganda broadcasts mentioned her by name, calling her the Devil Woman. They claimed she was a myth, stating that no woman could kill that many Germans. They suggested she was Soviet propaganda, and if she was real, she was probably a man disguised as a woman. Ludmila heard the broadcasts through other soldiers who informed her what the Germans were saying. She found it amusing. The Germans were so terrified of her that they could not believe she existed. Their denial served as proof of her effectiveness. Ludmilla did not care what they said. She cared that they were frightened. Frightened enemies made mistakes, and Ludmilla was there to punish every mistake. She began leaving signatures, small things like a piece of ribbon tied near her shooting position after she had departed, or a playing card placed on a dead German sniper's chest. The Red Queen of death. Soviet propaganda embraced it enthusiastically. Newspapers published stories about Lady Death who taunted German snipers before killing them. Ludmilla never confirmed or denied the stories. She allowed them to believe what they wanted. Belief created fear. Fear created mistakes. Mistakes created opportunities. And opportunities created confirmed kills. The engagement that made her legendary occurred on November 7, 1941. German forces were pushing hard on Sevastopol, and Soviet defenders were holding by the thinnest margins. The siege was brutal, with food running out, ammunition being rationed, and medical supplies nearly gone. A German sniper had killed 11 Soviet soldiers in 3 days, officers, sergeants, anyone who gave orders. The sniper was systematically decapitating the Soviet command structure. Nobody could locate him or counter him. He took one shot and then vanished like a ghost. Soviet command was desperate. Major Chernov called Ludmilla to headquarters and showed her photographs of the dead with entry wounds displaying perfect placement. Every shot was fatal, with no wounded, only dead. The German was exceptionally skilled. Chernov explained that the entire command structure was paralyzed. Officers were afraid to show themselves, and sergeants were refusing to give orders in the open. The sniper was winning through terror. He was not just killing people, but destroying morale. Soviet command asked Ludmilla to find him, giving her 48 hours. If she could not kill him, the entire sector might collapse. Commanders would refuse to lead, units would fragment, and the German offensive would break through. 48 hours. One sniper against another. Winner takes the sector. Loser dies. Ludmilla accepted. She had no choice. This was what she had trained for, why she existed on this battlefield, to kill German snipers, to be better than them, to prove that courage and innovation could defeat experience and skill. She studied the kill locations, which were all within a 400-meter radius, all during early morning between 5:45 a.m. and 7:30 a.m., all single shots to the head or chest. This was precision work. The German was exceptionally skilled. She plotted the angles on a map. Every kill came from a slightly different direction. Northeast one day, southwest the next, northwest after that. The German was mobile, changing positions constantly, never shooting from the same place twice, never establishing a pattern. He was following doctrine perfectly. He was everything Morozova was, everything Soviet doctrine taught, and Morozova was dead. Ludmilla needed to think differently. She studied the terrain with Lieutenant Boris, a reconnaissance officer who had survived the siege of Odessa. Boris knew Sevastopol better than anyone, every street, every ruin, every crater. They walked the perimeter at night, which was dangerous work with German patrols active. However, Ludmilla needed to see the battlefield from ground level, needed to understand sightlines, needed to think like the German. The area consisted of urban ruins with collapsed buildings, rubble-filled streets, and shell craters everywhere. 1,000 hiding places. The German could be anywhere, but he needed to see his targets, which meant he required sightlines, clear views, and unobstructed angles. Ludmilla mapped every position with clear views of where Soviet officers congregated. The command post, supply depot, communication center, and observation posts. She identified 14 potential sniper positions, including buildings with intact upper floors, ruins with good concealment, and positions offering multiple escape routes. There were too many to watch simultaneously. She needed to narrow it down. The Germans shot in early morning. Ludmila contemplated the reasons for hours, laying in her bunk, staring at the ceiling and running scenarios. Early morning meant Soviet officers were visible, moving between positions, checking defenses and giving orders. First light meant soldiers were tired and less alert. Guards were changing shifts and attention was divided. The German was hunting during shift change, which meant he was watching specific locations at specific times. He knew Soviet routines and had studied them. He was patient and intelligent. He was everything Ludmila had to beat. Ludmila selected the 3 most likely positions based on sight lines and escape routes: the north tower of a destroyed church, the 3rd floor of a collapsed apartment building, and the rooftop of a former school. All had perfect views of Soviet command areas. All offered multiple exit routes, and all were elevated enough to provide tactical advantage. Then she did something even more insane than her normal tactics. She decided to become the bait herself. Not a decoy, not a helmet on a stick, but herself, standing in the open, making herself the most valuable target on the battlefield. If the German took the shot, she would have perhaps 1.5 seconds to react. If she was wrong about his position, she would be dead before hitting the ground. If she was right, she would have one chance to dive, acquire the target, and fire before he repositioned. One chance, one moment, everything on the line.
She stood there for 17 minutes. Each minute felt like an hour. Every nerve screamed at her to take cover, every instinct telling her this was suicide. Her hands remained at her sides, relaxed. She had to look natural, had to appear like a real officer, not bait. Wind blew cold across the ruins. She could hear distant artillery and machine gun fire to the east, normal battlefield sounds. Nothing moved in the German positions. Perhaps the German was not there. Perhaps he had repositioned during the night. Perhaps he had been killed by artillery. Perhaps this entire plan was based on faulty intelligence, and she was standing in the open for nothing. Or perhaps he was watching her right now, with crosshairs centered on her chest, finger on the trigger, waiting for the perfect moment. Her heart pounded. Sweat ran down her back despite the cold. She counted seconds. 120 seconds standing in the open. 120 seconds of being a target. Nothing happened. Perhaps the German was not interested. Perhaps he had seen through the trap. The shot came at 5:59 a.m. Ludmila heard it before she felt it. The crack of a rifle, a distinct sound, a Mauser Carabiner 98K. The snap of a bullet passing centimeters from her head, so close she felt the air displacement, so close it parted her hair. She dove left, not back, left, toward her rifle. She hit the ground hard, ignored the pain, and grabbed her rifle. Her hands found it instantly through muscle memory. She had positioned it perfectly. She swung the barrel toward the church tower and scanned through the scope. There, 300 meters away, on the 3rd floor of the destroyed bell tower, a figure was moving back from an opening. He had taken the shot and was repositioning, moving back into shadow. She had perhaps 3 seconds before he was completely concealed. Ludmila did not take time to aim perfectly. She did not calculate wind. She did not adjust for exact distance. She simply pointed and fired, an instinct shot, the kind of shot instructors advise never to take, the kind of shot that gets soldiers killed in combat. Her rifle kicked against her shoulder. Through the scope, she observed the figure jerk and stagger before falling backwards into darkness. She did not know if she had hit him or if he had taken cover. She remained down, watching, waiting. She chambered another round and kept her scope on the tower opening. If he appeared again, she would fire repeatedly until one of them was dead. 3 minutes passed. Nothing moved in the tower. No return fire, no movement. Either he was dead, or he was playing the same game, waiting for her to expose herself again. Ludmila did not move. She had learned patience and understood that the sniper who moved first usually died first. 10 minutes passed. The sun was rising, and more light meant more visibility and more risk. Soviet soldiers were starting their morning routines. Officers were emerging from bunkers. If the German was still alive, he had more targets now. However, he did not shoot. 15 minutes after her shot, Ludmila observed Soviet infantry moving toward the church. Boris had organized a clearing team that had been waiting for her signal. She had signaled by shooting. The soldiers entered the church cautiously, with rifles ready, expecting ambush and expecting the German to be alive and waiting. Ludmila watched through her scope, following their movement through the ruins. They reached the 3rd floor and entered the bell tower. 2 minutes later, Boris appeared at the tower opening and waved. All clear, target down, confirmed kill. Ludmila lowered her rifle. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, but from adrenaline crash. She had just survived a duel with a German sniper. She had made herself bait, taken an impossible shot under pressure, and won. Soviet soldiers moved in to clear the building and found a German sniper on the 3rd floor of the bell tower. A single shot through the chest. Dead. His rifle was still in his hands, a Mauser K98 with a Zeiss scope and custom modifications. This was not a standard issue weapon, but a sniper's personal rifle. His scope was still warm. His position was perfect, with concealment, sight lines, and an escape route. He had done everything right except underestimate his target. They found his logbook in his coat pocket, with detailed records including names, dates, and distances. According to his own documentation, he had 94 confirmed kills. His name was listed as Hauptmann Erwin Koenig, Wehrmacht sniper, special operations counter-sniper specialist, or that is what Soviet propaganda claimed. Western historians debate whether Koenig actually existed. Some suggest the name was invented for propaganda purposes. Some say he was real, but the details were exaggerated. Some say Ludmila killed multiple German snipers, and Soviet command combined them into one legendary enemy. The truth is uncertain. What matters is that Ludmila killed a German sniper who had terrorized an entire Soviet sector. She accomplished it by making herself bait. She accomplished it by breaking every rule in Soviet sniper doctrine. She accomplished it because following rules meant death, and Ludmila had long ago decided that she would rather risk death on her own terms than die following someone else's instructions. Between August 1941 and May 1942, Ludmila Pavlichenko eliminated 309 German soldiers. 36 of them were snipers, 187 were officers and NCOs. The remainder were infantry, machine gunners, and artillery spotters. Every single kill was confirmed by a witness or recovered enemy documents. Soviet command maintained strict confirmation requirements. Propaganda required proof. She employed the bait technique in at least 60 engagements, probably more. Records from the siege of Sevastopol were incomplete. Many combat reports were lost when the city fell, but survivors remembered. They remembered the woman sniper who stood in the open, who made herself a target, who killed Germans who believed they were the hunters. She was wounded 4 times during her combat service. In September 1941, shrapnel from a mortar round caused minor cuts to her arm and shoulder. She was bandaged in the field and returned to combat the next day. In December 1941, she suffered a concussion from an artillery blast when a shell landed 10 meters away when she was repositioning. She was knocked unconscious for 2 minutes, recovered, and refused medical evacuation. In February 1942, shrapnel struck her leg from a German 88mm airburst. She was caught in the open during a barrage, and shrapnel tore through her calf. Medics patched her up. She was immobile for a week, started walking again after 10 days, and returned to combat after 3 weeks. In June 1942, mortar shrapnel struck her face. This was the injury that ended her combat career. During Soviet bombardment of German positions, counter-battery fire ensued, with German mortar rounds walking across her sector. One landed close. She was in a shallow trench that was not deep enough. Shrapnel fragments hit her face, cutting her cheek, damaging her eye, and fracturing her jaw. Blood was everywhere. Medics thought she would die from shock. She did not.
A field hospital stabilized her condition. A military hospital in Sevastopol performed surgery. Doctors saved her eye. Her face would scar, but she would survive.
The injury was not immediately life-threatening, but Soviet command made a decision. She was too valuable, too famous, too important for propaganda. Her kill count was already legendary. 309 confirmed, more than any other Soviet sniper at that point in the war, more than most snipers would achieve in the entire war. If she died now, it would be a propaganda disaster. It was better to pull her from combat, use her for morale, show her to the world, and prove that Soviet women could fight. Soviet command pulled her from the front in July 1942. She was 25 years old. She had been in combat for 11 months, with 309 kills, 4 wounds, 0 losses of nerve, 0 breakdowns, and 0 requests to be reassigned. She wanted to stay and argued with her commanders. She stated that she could still shoot, that her injuries were superficial, and that Soviet forces needed experienced snipers. Command refused. Orders were orders. She was going on tour. First to Moscow, then to Britain, then to the United States. A goodwill tour to show the Allies that Soviets were fighting hard, to show them that even Soviet women were warriors, to build support for a second front. Ludmila hated it. She was a soldier, not a performer. Nevertheless, she followed orders. She went to Moscow in August 1942, gave speeches, met with Communist Party officials, and was awarded the Hero of the Soviet Union Medal, the country's highest honor. She was the first woman in Soviet history to receive it. Newspapers published her story. Pravda ran a front-page article titled "Lady Death, the Woman Who Killed 309 Fascists." Radio broadcasts featured interviews. She described her techniques, talked about using decoys, about dual nest tactics, about hunting German snipers, about making herself bait. Military strategists took notes. Her methods started being taught in Soviet sniper schools. The formal doctrine began to change. Aggressive tactics, psychological warfare, using the enemy's expectations against them. Ludmila's innovations became official Soviet sniper doctrine by 1943. In September 1942, she traveled to Britain and met with Winston Churchill. He asked her about combat, about killing, about what it felt like to shoot 309 people. She told him it felt like mathematics: distance, wind, target movement, solve the equation, pull the trigger. Churchill stated he did not believe her and suggested she must feel something, whether guilt or pride. Ludmila responded that she felt tired. That was all, just tired. In October 1942, she traveled to the United States. This trip changed everything. She met Eleanor Roosevelt, the First Lady. Roosevelt was fascinated by her, a woman warrior, a feminist icon, living proof that women could do anything men could do. Roosevelt arranged for Ludmila to speak at rallies, dozens of them, in New York, Chicago, San Francisco, and Washington. Everywhere she went, thousands of people came to hear her. American newspapers called her the most dangerous woman in the world. Magazines published profiles. Photographers followed her everywhere. She became famous, not in the Soviet Union, where she had been just another soldier, but in America, where she was exotic, mysterious, a female sniper, an impossibility. American women loved her. She represented something they could not be. Women could not serve in combat in the U.S. military. However, here was Ludmila. 309 kills, proof that women could fight, proof that gender did not determine capability. American military officers were skeptical. They questioned her kill count, suggesting it was propaganda. They claimed no one, man or woman, could kill 309 enemy soldiers in 11 months. Ludmila did not argue. She allowed her record to speak for itself.
Soviet command had confirmed every kill, with witnesses, documents, and physical evidence. The numbers were real. The U.S. War Department eventually verified her claims through their own intelligence, cross-referencing her kills with German casualty reports. The numbers matched. She was not lying. She really had killed 309 Germans. The tour lasted 6 months. By the time it ended in early 1943, Ludmila was exhausted. She had given hundreds of speeches, met thousands of people, and smiled for thousands of photographs. She had become a symbol, and she hated it. She wanted to go back to the front, back to Sevastopol, back to where she mattered. But Sevastopol had fallen in July 1942. The siege had ended. Soviet forces had been evacuated or captured. The city was German now. There was nothing to go back to. Ludmila returned to the Soviet Union in March 1943. Soviet command assigned her to training duty. She would teach new snipers, pass on her knowledge, her techniques, her innovations. She would create the next generation of Soviet snipers. She taught at multiple training facilities in Leningrad, Moscow, and Kiev with hundreds of students. She taught them everything: how to build dual nests, how to use decoys effectively, how to predict enemy sniper positions, how to think like the enemy, how to make yourself the predator rather than the prey. Some of her students became legendary themselves. Vasily Zaitsev studied her techniques, adapted them, and used them at Stalingrad. His 225 confirmed kills made him the second most successful Soviet sniper of the war, after Ludmila. Other students went on to train more snipers. The knowledge spread. By 1944, Soviet sniper doctrine had been completely transformed. The defensive, concealment-focused approach was gone, replaced by aggressive, psychological tactics and hunting tactics. Soviet snipers were no longer hiding. They were hunting. And it worked. German casualty rates from sniper fire increased dramatically between 1943 and 1945. Soviet snipers were killing more German soldiers than ever before. More importantly, they were surviving. Sniper casualty rates dropped. Soviet snipers were living long enough to become experienced, to pass on knowledge, to train others. The doctrinal change saved thousands of Soviet lives. And it all started with Ludmila deciding to use herself as bait.